received a $3 million grant in 1950 to work with the Tainan College of Engineering, which later on, of course, became National Cheng Kung University. So for 10 years, they brought huge amount of people in 1950 to 1960 to Purdue University and sent a huge amount of people to National Cheng Kung University. That 10 years, to me, was far. What happened in those 10 years, they also built some buildings. By the way, $3 million in 1950, according to the best calculation of today, would be equivalent to somewhere between $30 to $60 million today, US. There's a lot of money. So in 10 years, this interaction, I believe, paved the way for the university to reach a mindset so that they could become a research university. If that mindset didn't come in, the university couldn't possibly become a research university. So the mindset was very important. But between 1960 to 1980, the university became comfortable again. And so we need to inject some degree of, again, uncomfortability into the system. Fortunately, that came in 1980, when Taiwan said that in the southern part of Taiwan, there was only a private medical school. We need a major southern medical school in the system. So National Cheng Kung University and National Sun Yat-sen University in Kaohsiung went after this, competed, and National Cheng Kung University won. Once we have the medical school, that was the injection that we needed, because it brought in, because there were no medical schools in the southern part, so all the faculties had to come from outside. New ideas came in, new thinkings came in, new way of operation came in. People who were already used to a certain way of doing things had to deal with people that they are not used to the way they deal with things. That was the important change. And that drive the university to the next level, I believe, what it is today. Now we are at the third stage. How do we go from, as you can see, our structural stability to the next level? How do we really become a great university? How do we find the degree of uncomfortability? Well, I can only guess right now, because I believe that in the 21st century, things are changing so fast. As I said, it is like it is the non-adiabatic expansion. The university must find its way out of this chaotic situation. And I believe that the injection of uncomfortability is going to come from Asia, other parts of Asia. It's going to come from Malaysia. It's probably, definitely is going to come from mainland China. It's going to come from all the surrounding areas, and letting the competition know that it is facing us in the face. We need to also develop new schools, new colleges, for example. It is inconceivable to me that a great comprehensive university like ours, or hope to be one, does not have a law school. The lack of a law school is a fundamental weakness of our university, because the lack of a law school implies that the nation pays little attention to the concept of legal structure within a country. And that is a necessary change. Then I think that if we have a law school, we'll have to bring in all kinds of people that didn't exist in the university before. It will inject into new ideas. It will inject people into the system. I always say that, I was not educated in Taiwan. I never did 1 year of class in Taiwan. I grew up in Singapore. I left there, and I only came 3.5 years ago. So I'm always able to, perhaps because of my background, I was able to see things a little bit different from the way they see things. So I always tell them that you need not just one of me, you probably need 1,000 of me. And then I think the National Cheng Kung University, that's how it will drive to the next level. Ultimately, the change will have to make sure people have certain level of uneasiness. The uneasiness is absolutely necessary in a university, in any human organization. Without that, you will not only reach a steady state, you're going to go downhill. Now, even in Malaysia, as good a university as you are in Malaysia, you cannot sit on your laurels. Somebody else out there, and you know better than I do who's out there, is going to take over if you don't do it, because nothing stays permanent. And this is a highly nonlinear system. For those of you who have done nonlinear calculations, any kind of nonlinearity that's injected into a differential equation will cause bifurcations, will cause change. And then that to me is how we moved in the last, sorry, that's probably more than you want to hear. Also, please tell me who you are.
I'm Zainuddin. I've met you on my Taiwan trip recently. Well, our politicians are very nice people. They keep telling the story that
they are?
Malaysia is that lucky country. We're full of natural resources. We have rubber, we have palm oil, we have petroleum, we have gas. And therefore, we feel very comfortable. So that is the Malaysian dilemma, the comfort, the ease. But I just want to ask you a question. Having China as your neighbor, and I gather there that they can be very hostile to Taiwan, and they have the guns pointing at you, which can be sent at any moment. Does that make Taiwanese universities drive themselves to protect themselves for survival and therefore achieve excellence in the universities? Thank you.
You asked a core question regarding Taiwan and China. This is not an easy question to answer, but I'll try my best. Yes, you're right. There are 1,500 missiles pointing in Taiwan right now. But I also believe, by the way, that not a single Taiwanese go to bed at night worried about that. Okay? Not a single Taiwanese worried about that. It will not happen. China is a different country from North Korea. And besides, I also believe, by the way, that those missiles will be moved before the election next year. And it's going to move interior. Why? Because China can shoot anything to within 500 meters of accuracy anywhere they are. They could be in Tibet and they can hit Taiwan. So they don't need to be in Fujian. So missiles, to me, is just there. And it's the same with all Taiwanese. But you point out a much more complicated issue, more than just military confrontation. By the way, not a single week that I go by that I don't have Chinese visitors in my office. Every week we have now. So, and furthermore, I also notice that our Chinese department has actually turned out to be extremely good. Why do I say they're good? What do I know about it? After all, I'm not a Chinese literary expert. But I do know that all the great Chinese departments of great Chinese universities, Peking universities, Fudan universities, Wuhan universities, Sun Yat-sen universities in Guangzhou, they come here all the time. Why? Well, because they said very clearly, during the Cultural Revolution, we were destroyed. And we need to learn how to rebuild the understanding of our culture. And the only way that we can learn this is in Taiwan. Taiwan is far more Chinese than China. So that is there. But I think that the issue of Taiwan is really much more fundamental than that. The issue is, how does Taiwan view itself in the Asia-Pacific landscape? And as a physicist, I always look for models. And I always say that Taiwan should really start thinking in the model of not Switzerland, Switzerland. Why Switzerland? Well, Switzerland are surrounded by 4 very large countries, powerful countries: France, Germany, England, and Italy. And the French don't trust the Germans. The Germans probably don't trust the English, and nobody trusts the Italians. And I hope there are no Italians here. So where do you think these 4 countries put the world's largest and the best research centers are? In Geneva. It is the neutral ground. Even during World War II, Switzerland never participated. It would always stand away from all the conflicts. The conflict, all that put together. So Taiwan needs to start thinking itself like this. Stop worrying about whether it's a country or not. I always tell Taiwanese, my good friends, look, your education is run by you. Your military is run by you. Your government is run by you. The only thing you cannot do in the world, and now you can even go to Europe without visas. I don't know whether you can come to Malaysia without visas, but probably soon. So the only thing you cannot do in the world is to vote in the UN. Who cares? So if you can play the role of what Switzerland did, you can be a fantastic opportunity. Also, I also said very, very clearly that one needs to understand Asia. Well, I'll give you one example of how Taiwan does not understand Southeast Asian culture. As you all know, that the Southeast Asian Chinese, many of them, their English names, they use Fujian pronunciations. For example, the Vice President for National University of Singapore, his Chinese name is Cheng Yongcai, and his English name is Dan Chai. Some of you probably know him. Well, when we came here to visit them, one of my colleagues kept on referring to him in Chinese as Tan Xiansheng, because she thought T-A-N is this Chinese name Tan. And finally, Eng Chai told him, no, I am Chen, not Tan. So if you cannot understand the culture of even your neighbors, how are you going to globalize? How are you going to globalize all over the world? So when you deal with Southeast Asians, as I told my friends in Taiwan, don't deal it from the perspective, from the coordinate of Taiwan. Deal it from the coordinate of Malaysia. Then you can really work with them. Then you truly can help each other. Otherwise, there is a gap between the two. The same thing with China. You have to understand, you know, China is like a 600-pound gorilla living next door. And you don't want him to come to dinner too often, but you have to respect him. And it's, you know, just last week, I learned China has the fastest high-speed rail. And just last week, China surpassed all countries in the world and has the fastest computer. So this is coming. It's reality. As I told you earlier, my thesis advisor, the world is real. So I think that this is again part of this non-adiabatic expansion. Universities must play the role in helping Taiwan our university must play the role in helping Taiwan to understand the future. Otherwise, we'll run into trouble. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor Feng. My name is K.S. Balakrishnan. I'm one of the lecturers in the Department of International and Strategic Studies. Let me make one or two critical observations of your talk today. One such is that the examples that you gave us to inspire towards this world-class university have been those leaders of knowledge world who were never nurtured in a competitive environment. They were not competing between universities or knowledge world. So the examples you have set, they are archaic, you know, they don't look at knowledge in that sense, but this is the dilemma that we have. Second point I would like to observe is that do we really need to be so competitive, obsessed with competition between university or obsessed with world ranking? Because there's another dilemma that comes in. This is an intellectual challenge for all of us. That is proliferation of productions of materials that are too many that sometimes endanger, sometimes undermine. People think, oh, this university is competing too much, producing too many papers. Are these papers really valuable? Now, I visited a couple of top universities, for example, even in my neighboring country, and I saw this university has got top ranking. And I see peers of my own field producing tons of papers, and sometimes when I read back, where is the knowledge I'm looking for? You know, are we producing papers for numbers of papers, but where is the knowledge we're looking for? You know? So this is the challenge. The challenge is, my first critical observation of your presentation is, we are always talking about something glorious of the past, being unable to locate ourselves in the present. Second, the challenge is overproduction and meaningless instead of coming up with innovation. Third comment is that, I'm sorry because I'm political scientist, you know, we are trained to be critical theorists, you know, sometimes.
Some of my best friends are political scientists.
The third challenge is the Asianness sometimes that you're using. You know, we analyze identity, culture, politics, you know. To me, whether Asian or not Asian, that's not an issue. Knowledge is knowledge. There's no identity barrier here. To inspire whatever the best, whichever part of the world, we have to work together and come up. So in that sense, thank you, Professor. You gave us a very inspiring talk. But these are challenges that we face, and we seek your wisdom. Thank you.
Well, not sure I remember all your points, but let me just say, first of all, let's just first talk about the importance of publications and ranking. You know, a good friend of mine who won the 2004 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, Aaron Shakhanova from the Technion, published his paper, his groundbreaking paper, in 1980 in a journal whose impact factor is 0. So, impact, does that mean impact factor is that important? All that put aside, there are two levels here you have to think of. And I think one has to be realistic. First of all, if you are in the top 10 or already in the top, all this does not matter. Really, it does not matter. When Stanford University's president came to visit one of our top universities in Taiwan, that president asked this president of Stanford, oh, you know, last year your ranking dropped by 4. What happened? His answer was, well, we're still Stanford. The answer is arrogant, but it's realistic. When you are structurally stable, as I mentioned earlier, it didn't matter. You don't even have to pay attention to that. A good friend of mine, John Negley, who is the director of the Center for Theoretical Physics of MIT, and I asked him, where does pressure come from at MIT? He said, well, I stepped into the elevator this morning, and Sam Ting, who is a Nobel laureate, was in there. And he looked at me, and he said, what have you done lately? That's pressure, okay? So when you're already self-propelling, the system is self-propelling, it doesn't matter. Most of us, my university included, it's not there yet. You change leadership, you change certain people, things will slide, and slide quickly. And you can't really blame the decision makers at this point of wanting publications or wanting indices. Why? Because they're not used to it either. Taiwan's higher education ministry has a division called the Higher Education Department. I mean, Taiwan's Ministry of Education has a division of higher education. I think you have a Ministry of Higher Education.